Like, share, and subscribe because it is free.
The Galactic Council's planetary classification system had operated flawlessly for over 3,000 years. Every world discovered fell neatly into categories ranging from level 1 paradise worlds to the theoretical level 100 nightmare planets that existed only in computer simulations. Most civilized species evolved on comfortable level 10 worlds, with pleasant temperatures, breathable atmospheres, and predictable weather patterns. The few hardy souls from level 25 worlds were considered remarkably resilient. Level 50 worlds were the stuff of horror stories whispered in diplomatic corridors. Crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, and violent weather systems that could obliterate entire cities without warning. The Council's xenobiologists theorized that any species surviving such conditions would either be primitive hunter-gatherers clinging to existence or dead within a few generations. No known civilization had ever emerged from anything beyond level 60. The morning everything changed started like any other in the classification center. Senior analyst Vexthor was reviewing routine stellar surveys when his console erupted in warning signals. The readings were impossible. A level 87 Deathworld, rotating peacefully in the Goldilocks zone of a stable star system, was broadcasting organized electromagnetic signals. Not the random static of dying technology or the desperate pleas of a failing colony, but the complex, layered communications of a thriving technological civilization. Vexthor ran the calculations 17 times. Each result confirmed the nightmare. Earth registered atmospheric toxicity levels that would kill most species within minutes, gravitational forces that would crush standard galactic physiology, weather patterns violent enough to be classified as continuous natural disasters, and radiation exposure that exceeded safe limits by factors of hundreds. Yet somehow, impossibly, billions of individual signatures moved across its surface in organized patterns suggesting vast cities, transportation networks, and industrial complexes. The emergency session convened within hours. Council members from 47 species gathered in the Great Chamber, their various forms of shock rippling through the universal translation matrix. Ambassador Zefkar, veteran of over 200 first contact missions, studied the data with growing disbelief. In his experience, harsh worlds produced either corpses or primitives. The idea of an advanced civilization thriving on a level 87 death world challenged everything they understood about evolution, technology, and survival. Perhaps they're refugees, suggested Council Merthak, her crystalline form refracting nervous light. Survivors from another world, trapped on this nightmare planet, slowly dying while trying to escape. Zefkar shook his massive head. The energy signatures suggest they're not just surviving. They're expanding, building, growing. These readings indicate a population in the billions, not a struggling colony of refugees. The debate raged for hours. Some argued for immediate quarantine, terrified of what monsters such a world might produce. Others insisted on careful observation from a safe distance. But Zefkar saw opportunity where others saw threat. His reputation was built on successful first contacts with primitive species. These Deathworlders, however advanced they might appear, were still isolated, still ignorant of the greater galactic community. They would be grateful for contact, eager for the gifts of true civilization. "I'll make contact," Zefkar announced, his confidence absolute. "Whatever they are, they need our help. No being chooses to live on a level 87 world. We have the technology to relocate them, to give them better lives on civilized worlds. This is what the Council exists for." The decision was unanimous. Zefkar would lead a diplomatic mission, carrying gifts of advanced technology, medical supplies, and terraforming equipment. They would offer these suffering beings salvation from their hellish world, guidance into galactic community, and the wisdom of species who had evolved beyond such primitive conditions. As his ship departed toward the Sol system, Zefkar reviewed his approach. Standard first contact protocols assumed primitive but grateful recipients. He would arrive as a savior, offering rescue from their dying world. What he found waiting would shatter every assumption the galaxy held about evolution, survival, and strength. 3 days into the journey, Zefkar's confidence began wavering as his sensors penetrated deeper into the Sol system. The readings defied logic. Not only was the third planet teeming with life, but artificial structures orbited it. Space stations, satellites, and what appear to be maintenance vessels moved in organized patterns around the Death World. His crew huddled behind radiation shielding as they approached, their instruments screaming warnings about lethal cosmic radiation levels that somehow didn't seem to affect the orbital installations. "How are they surviving up there?" whispered Navigator Kesslin, her tentacles trembling as she watched human spacecraft casually drift through radiation fields that would cook their ship's crew in minutes. No shielding we can detect, no protective barriers. They're flying around in metal containers like it's perfectly safe. The first human transmission crackled through their communication array with startling casualness. "Unknown vessel. This is Houston Ground Control. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. Are you experiencing any technical difficulties? We're tracking you on an unusual approach vector." Zefkar stared at the communication panel. Where were the panic screams? The desperate pleas for salvation? The primitive worship of his obviously superior technology? Instead, he was being treated like a lost tourist asking for directions. His ship's translation matrix worked frantically to parse the strange combination of concern, curiosity, and administrative efficiency in the human's voice. "This is Ambassador Zefkar of the Galactic Council," he transmitted, following centuries of established protocol. "I come bearing gifts of knowledge and technology to aid your struggling civilization in these harsh conditions." The response came quickly, but not in the grateful tones he expected. "Ambassador Zefkar, welcome to Earth's solar system. I'm forwarding your diplomatic credentials to the appropriate departments. In the meantime, are you able to maintain stable orbit? Our meteorology department is tracking some solar flare activity that might affect navigation systems. We can guide you to a safer orbital path if needed." Zefkar's mandibles clicked in confusion. They were offering to help him navigate their deadly radiation-soaked system. His crew exchanged bewildered glances as more human communications filled their channels. Radio chatter about weather patterns that would obliterate most civilizations, casual discussions of atmospheric conditions that registered as toxic on every scanner, and routine coordination of activities that should have been impossible for any known species to survive. "Attention, diplomatic vessel." Came another transmission, this one for what the humans called their International Space Station. "We prepared Docking Bay 7 for your arrival. Please be advised that we're currently experiencing minor atmospheric disturbances. Nothing serious, just a Category 2 hurricane passing through the eastern Atlantic. Should clear up by tomorrow." The alien crew watched their instruments in horror as the minor disturbance registered as a civilization-ending storm system. Yet human communications continued with the same casual efficiency, discussing the hurricane like a brief inconvenience rather than a natural disaster. More disturbing still, other humans were apparently working outside their stations during this minor event, performing routine maintenance while being buffeted by forces that would tear apart most galactic species. Engineering Officer Thexmar pulled up atmospheric readings and compared them to the Council's biological databases. "Ambassador, according to our scans, the oxygen concentration alone should be poisoning them. The atmospheric pressure would crush most known species. The temperature variations would kill anything we've cataloged. Yet they're not just surviving, they're thriving." Ground Control continued providing helpful updates. "Ambassador, we've contacted the UN's First Contact Division. They'll have representatives ready to meet you at Kennedy Space Center. Fair warning, we're expecting some thunderstorms this afternoon, but nothing that should interfere with landing procedures. The temperature's a comfortable 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Comfortable. The aliens' environmental suits register the temperature as within lethal parameters for most galactic species. The thunderstorms showed energy readings comparable to weapons discharge. These humans casually lived through conditions that would serve as execution methods on civilized worlds. As they approached the designated landing coordinates, Zefkar realized that prepared speeches about salvation and rescue were becoming increasingly irrelevant. These beings weren't struggling to survive their nightmare world. They were managing it with casual competence that suggested something far more disturbing than primitive resilience. The growing certainty that he had fundamentally misunderstood everything about Deathworlders settled in his stomach like a cold weight, and Earth's blue-green surface loomed ahead like a beautiful, impossible contradiction to everything the galaxy believed about survival and evolution. The landing at Kennedy Space Center took place during what humans cheerfully described as pleasant weather. Zeth-Kar's crew sealed themselves in full environmental suits, their instruments screaming warnings about atmospheric toxicity, crushing gravity, and radiation levels that should have sterilized the continent. Through the viewports, they watched in mounting horror as humans walk around completely unprotected, breathing the poisonous air as if it were perfectly normal. Children. There were actual human children playing near the landing area, running and laughing in conditions that would kill most galactic species within minutes. The sight violated every principle of evolutionary biology Zeth-Kar understood. Young beings were supposed to be fragile, requiring protection and controlled environments. These small humans were casually existing in an atmosphere that registered as a chemical weapon on his sensors. The welcoming committee approached without protective gear of any kind. Dr. Sarah Chun, the UN's first contact representative, walked up to their ship wearing nothing more than a light jacket. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Zeth-Kar. How was your journey? You folks look a bit uncomfortable in those suits. Are your environmental systems working properly?" Zeth-Kar emerged from his ship, every sensor in his suit blazing red with danger warnings. The gravity alone should have been crushing him despite his reinforced exoskeleton. Yet this small human female stood casually in front of him, genuinely concerned about his comfort. We come bearing gift of technology to aid your people's survival on this hostile world." Dr. Chen's eyebrows rose with polite interest. "That's very kind of you. We always appreciate learning about new technologies. Though I have to ask, what do you mean by hostile? This is actually one of our nicer days. Temperature's perfect, humidity's low, and we're not expecting any severe weather until Thursday." Behind her, a group of human youngsters were engaged in what appeared to be ritualized combat, throwing a spherical object at each other with tremendous force, while running at speeds that would be considered superhuman by most galactic standards. When one child fell and scraped his knee on the concrete, he simply brushed off the injury and continued playing. Zeth-Kar's medical scanners detected cellular damage that should have required immediate surgical intervention, yet the child treated it as insignificant. "Your young ones," Zeth-Kar managed, his voice modulator struggling with disbelief. "They're injured. Don't they require medical attention?" Dr. Chen glanced over at the children and smiled. "Oh, that's just Tommy being Tommy. Kids are pretty resilient. A scraped knee never killed anybody. They'll probably head over to the beach after this to go swimming." Swimming in an ocean that Zeth-Kar sensors classified as a corrosive chemical bath teeming with predatory life forms. These humans were planning to voluntarily immerse themselves in what amounted to a torture device for recreational purposes. "Dr. Chun," Zeth-Kar said carefully, "our scans indicate this world experiences frequent catastrophic weather events, atmospheric toxicity, dangerous radiation exposure, and gravitational stress that should be fatal to organic life. How has your species managed to adapt?" She looked genuinely puzzled. "Adapt? I mean, sure, we have to deal with hurricanes, earthquakes, the occasional volcano, but that's just life, isn't it? You learn to work with what you've got. Last month, we had a pretty decent earthquake in California, but the building codes held up well. Most people just posted about it on social media. Social media posts about seismic events that would devastate civilizations. Zeth-Kar's worldview cracked a little more. These weren't level 1 beings struggling to survive on a level 87 world. These were beings so fundamentally adapted to extreme conditions that they treated planetary disasters as minor inconveniences worth sharing for entertainment. "Perhaps," Dr. Chin continued, "you'd like to see some of our cities? We could arrange a tour, show you how we've learned to thrive here. Fair warning, though, we're heading into storm season, so you might want to check if your equipment can handle a little wind and rain." A little wind and rain. Zeth-Kar sensors were already detecting the approaching weather system, and it registered as a natural disaster that would require immediate planetary evacuation on any civilized world. Yet this human was discussing it like a minor scheduling consideration. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, Zeth-Kar began to suspect that he wasn't here to rescue primitives from a hostile world. He was meeting beings who had evolved beyond the need for rescue, beyond the galaxy's understanding of what survival meant. The terrible possibility that humans weren't victims of their environment, but products that began taking root in his mind, changing everything he thought he knew about strength, adaptation, and what it truly meant to be civilized. Zethkar's return to the Galactic Council chambers 3 weeks later created a silence that echoed through the vast assembly hall. 47 species waited for his report, their various forms of anticipation rippling through the translation matrix. He had departed confident, carrying gifts for grateful primitives. He returned carrying a truth that would reshape galactic civilization. "They don't need our help," he began, his voice carrying an exhaustion that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. "They never needed our help. We fundamentally misunderstood what we were looking at." Counselor Marathak's crystalline form refracted nervous light. Surely they expressed gratitude for the contact? Primitive species always welcome guidance from more advanced civilizations. Zethkar's laugh held no humor. "Advanced? They offer me coffee during a thunderstorm that registered as an artillery bombardment on our sensors. Their children play games that would serve as military training for our most elite warriors. They discuss natural disasters the way we discuss minor schedule changes." The council chamber erupted in confused chatter. Senior Analyst Vextor leaned forward, his multifaceted eyes gleaming. "Ambassador, perhaps the stress of the mission has affected your judgment. No species can truly thrive on a level 87 death world. It's biologically impossible." "That's exactly the mistake we made," Zethkar replied, his voice gaining strength. "We assumed death world ratings measure habitability, rather than evolutionary pressure. Earth isn't a level 87 world despite having intelligent life. It has produced level 87 beings because of its conditions. The implications hit the assembly like a shockwave. For 3,000 years, they had classified worlds based on their hostility to galactic standard physiology. They had never considered that the hostility itself might be the forge that created beings beyond their understanding of strength and adaptability. I watched a human female jog through conditions that require our heaviest environmental suits," Zethkar continued. "She was exercising for recreational purposes in an atmosphere that would kill most of us within minutes. Their entertainment includes voluntary exposure to gravitational forces that would be considered torture devices on our worlds." The council xenobiologist, Dr. Kelmrith, processed this information with growing excitement. "If this is true, we need to completely reevaluate every high-level death world in our databases. Species we dismissed as impossible might be thriving beyond our comprehension." "There's more," Zethkar said. "They're not just surviving these conditions. They're innovating because of them. Their technology isn't built for comfort like ours. It's built to function in extremes we never imagined. Their medicine assumes resilience we consider superhuman. Their engineering accounts for stresses that would shatter our finest constructions." Counselor Thasdan, whose species prided themselves on their technological achievements, shifted uncomfortably. "What are you suggesting, Ambassador?" "I'm suggesting that we may have discovered beings whose casual existence makes them ideally suited for challenges we consider impossible. Worlds we've marked as uninhabitable might be garden spots to them. Problems that stump our greatest minds might be routine solutions in their databases." The chamber fell silent as the full scope of the revelations settled over them. Humanity wasn't a species to be pitted or rescued. They were a species that might revolutionize galactic civilization simply by sharing their perspective on what constituted normal living conditions. "They asked me about our worlds," Zethkar added quietly. "When I described our paradise planets, they seemed genuinely concerned about how we handle emergencies. They couldn't understand how we survive without regular challenges to test our systems and strengthen our capabilities." Dr. Kelmrith's excitement was palpable. We could learn from them, not just their technology, but their entire approach to existence. Imagine exploration vessels crewed by beings who consider level 50 worlds comfortable. Imagine the possibilities for expansion, for discovering new forms of life in environments we've written off as sterile. The vote to extend formal invitation for humanity to join the Galactic Council was unanimous, though the reasoning had changed completely. They weren't offering charity to struggling primitives. They were inviting partners whose mere presence would expand the boundaries of what galactic civilization considered possible. As the session concluded, Zefkar gazed out at the stars through the chamber's vast windows. Somewhere among those points of light were worlds they had dismissed as too harsh for intelligent life. Now he wondered what other level 87 species might be out there, casually thriving in conditions that would humble the galaxy's greatest minds, waiting to teach the universe new definitions of strength, adaptability, and the endless possibilities that emerged when life refused to merely survive and chose instead to flourish.